Hey, what's up? I am Ara, aka I Eat Zebra, and welcome back to the channel. In episode 4 of season 2 of House of the Dragon, Lord Darkland addresses Sir Criston Cole as the Kingmaker. This epithet is fitting, seeing as he is now the hand of the king and personally crowned Aegon II during his coronation at the Dragon Pit. House Darkland was pledged to Queen Rhaenyra, so Kingmaker is an insult being leveraged at a usurper. When I first heard Sir Criston Cole referred to as the Kingmaker when reading The World of Ice and Fire and later Fire and Blood, I couldn't help to think of the only other Kingmaker I know, the Earl of Warwick. If you are familiar with George R.R. Martin's work, you know he draws inspiration from real-life events. For the main A Song of Ice and Fire series, one of the most direct parallels is the English Civil War fought between the Yorks and Lancasters, known as the Wars of the Roses. One of the most polarizing figures during this conflict was Richard Neville, the 16th Earl of Warwick, aka the Kingmaker. You may be saying to yourself, well, isn't the Dance of Dragons more similar to the tumultuous period in English history known as the Anarchy? How is a man that lived 300 years later the inspiration for this war? Well, obviously, they share a nickname, but more than that, they led similar lives filled with meteoric rises, treachery, and an epic downfall. I'm going to break down the parallels between the Earl of Warwick and Sir Criston Cole's lives and how the fate of a 15th century English nobleman inspired one of the biggest villains in House of the Dragon, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard and Hand to the King, Sir Criston Cole. Now, let's dive into the lives of the Kingmakers. As a heads up, this video will contain spoilers for Fire and Blood that may impact House of the Dragon, so let's get to it. Let's travel back in time to 15th century England on the 22nd of November, 1428, born to Richard Neville, 5th Earl of Salisbury, and his wife Alice Montague, 5th Countess of Salisbury. The couple's third child and first son, Richard, entered the world. Richard was married at the age of 8, to Anne Beauchamp, the 16th Countess of Warwick. Through his marriage to Anne, he inherited the Earldom of Warwick. Anne and Richard had 2 daughters, Isabel and Anne Neville, who would both eventually be used as political pawns by their father, but that was typical for the time. Richard, Earl of Warwick, was born during the reign of the Lancastrian king Henry VI, who inherited the throne from his father, Henry V, and his grandsire, Henry IV, aka Henry of Bolingbroke, who was by all accounts a usurper. He was from the royal family just further down in the succession. Well, this upjumping was okay when King Henry's 4 and 5 sat the throne, as they were both strong leaders and known for their military might. Unfortunately, King Henry VI was still a baby when his father died on the battlefield from dysentery. During the regency of his uncles, the land remained united. However, as the regency ended and when King Henry VI's incompetence started to show, his cousin Richard, the Duke of York, decided to stand up and do something about it. One of the allies he enlisted was the Earl of Salisbury, Richard Neville, and his son and heir, also named Richard Neville, but he was the Earl of Warwick. During their early insurrection, both Richard, Duke of York, and the Earl of Salisbury would be killed. However, their cause was not lost when York's son, Edward, took up his father's claim, alongside the Earl of Warwick. They won the throne from Henry VI and sent him, his wife, and child on the run back to the continent. The now King Edward IV owed a lot of his early success to the council of the Earl of Warwick. Now starting to be known as the Kingmaker for his contributions to the Yorkist takeover, Warwick was rewarded with more titles such as the Captain of Calais, High Admiral of England, and Steward of the Duchy of Lancaster. The Earl of Warwick held a lot of respect and sway in Edward IV's court. To shore up Edward's security on the throne, the Kingmaker decided to make overtures to France to arrange a marriage with a foreign princess. However, his plans went to crap after the king decided to tell everyone he was secretly married to Elizabeth Woodville, daughter of Duchess Jacquetta of Luxembourg, and her husband Richard Woodville, 1st Earl Rivers. Jacquetta had been married to the former King Henry VI's uncle, the Duke of Bedford. After his death, she married a member of his household, Sir Richard Woodville. Due to her relationship with the royal family and friendship with Queen Margaret of Anjou, they were not severely punished, and Sir Richard was elevated to the title of Earl. They were Lancastrian loyalists and fought with King Henry VI, so for Edward to announce he is married to the daughter of Lancastrian loyalists and a widow to a man who died for that cause rightfully ticked him off a bit, especially now that this makes him look less powerful, which the Kingmaker could not have. The governor of Abbeville a contemporary of that time, wrote of the Earl of Warwick's influence at court in a letter to King Louis XI of France by saying, "They have but two rulers, Monsieur de Warwick and another whose name I have forgotten." Now with the marriage alliances he tried to make in the gutter, the Earl of Warwick was in a precarious situation. King Edward started to elevate his wife and her family to influential positions at court and throughout several houses. For some context, his wife is one out of 12. The marriage to Elizabeth Woodville was the beginning of the end of his friendship with Edward, the man he helped to crown king, with the Earl of Warwick eventually beheading both Queen Elizabeth's father and her brother John. As the Earl of Warwick continued to fall out with his once friend and king, Edward IV, he turned his eyes to Edward's younger brother, George, Duke of Clarence, as a means of usurping Edward on the claims he was an illegitimate child, and put George on the throne in his stead. He even married his eldest daughter Isabel to George to make the alliance more firm. This eventually fell through, and now he needed a new plan to get back the power he lost. He set his sights on the old King Henry VI. He reached out to King Henry's wife, the former Queen Margaret of Anjou. Margaret of Anjou is an interesting character in her own right. As the wife to a mentally ill king, she stepped up to maintain control over his kingdom, albeit poorly. Back to the Kingmaker, though. He teams up with the queen to install her husband back on the throne, and therefore ensuring their son, Prince Edward's claim as heir to the throne. To seal their alliance, Warwick married his youngest daughter, Anne, to Prince Edward. Now with the Kingmaker on their side, King Henry VI was able to take back his throne. As a result, the Kingmaker now installed his second king, if you will. However, the reinstallation of the Lancastrians would not last long. With conflicts breaking out in Burgundy and France, this directly impacted the English throne, as the Duke of Burgundy had a familial relationship to Edward IV and backed him in his effort to retake the throne from the treacherous Kingmaker, his brother and King Henry VI. The French backed King Henry VI as he has ties to the French throne and his wife is from France. As Edward's fortunes started to turn, and with George's rising discontent with his alliance with the Kingmaker, he made amends with his brother. He would eventually die a traitor's death in a vat of Malmsey wine, but that was due to his own actions and not the Earl of Warwick. However, that is a topic for another video. After all of his treachery and side-switching, the time finally came on the 14th of April, 1471. At the Battle of Barnet, Richard Neville, 16th Earl of Warwick, was killed trying to flee the field after choosing to fight on foot to show solidarity with his men. He was caught on a horse and struck down. A disloyal man with a dishonorable end. Sounds like another Kingmaker, I know. Now, let's get into Sir Criston Cole's journey and where he is headed to see how clear his fate is mirrored in that of Richard Neville. Sir Criston Cole was born the son of the steward of House Dondarrion. Not much is noted of his early life, and unlike the Kingmaker, he did not come from nobility. Sir Criston received recognition for his performance in the jousts at the tourney for the anticipation for Queen Emma's birthing of her next child, which ultimately ends with her dying. Most noticeably, in a cheap way, he beats Prince Daemon. We next see him when there is an opening on the Kingsguard and Princess Rhaenyra is allowed to choose the next member who would become her sworn protector. Against the advice of the Hand of the King, Otto Hightower, she chooses Sir Criston Cole for the job, due to his prior military experience, which was seriously lacking for most Westerosi knights at that time, as they lived through about 80 years of peace between King Jaehaerys and Viserys' reigns. Princess Rhaenyra elevates Cole to the Kingsguard, and the pair grow very close, with him admitting to her this honor he received was one she bestowed upon him, similar to how King Edward IV rewarded the Earl of Warwick. However, both Cole and Warwick switch up when their friends get married. As mentioned prior, the Earl of Warwick's fallout with King Edward started with the marriage to Elizabeth Woodville. Well, the same could be said about Princess Rhaenyra and Sir Criston Cole. Everything was great with their friendship, with Cole even telling Rhaenyra she would make a wonderful queen. He even saw the white hart present itself to her in the Kingswood. For more on the importance of that, check out my white hart video linked below. Rhaenyra and Criston, unlike Edward and Richard, had a physically intimate relationship. As Rhaenyra was meeting her new betrothed, Sir Laenor Velaryon, Criston Cole asked her to run away with him across the narrow sea where he would become a sellsword and she would just be his wife. He asked the heir to the Iron Throne, Princess of Dragonstone, Rider of Syrax, to give up her claim to be a sellsword's wife, selling oranges and whatnot in Essos, Rhaenyra, being the wise person she is, tells Cole that no, she will not run away. She has responsibilities, but her marriage to Laenor does not have to change their relationship. At the wedding of Laenor and Rhaenyra, Laenor's paramour, Joffrey, clocks his mutually shared position with Cole. Not being able to control his anger at being rejected by Rhaenyra, he beats Joffrey to death at their wedding. As he attempts to absolve himself of his crime, Alicent comes in to save the day and gives him a shoulder and more to confess on, thus forming the alliance between Queen Alicent and Sir Criston Cole. When King Viserys I eventually dies, he never changed his mind and wanted his daughter Rhaenyra to succeed him. However, Sir Criston Cole and several others made plans to usurp the throne and make Rhaenyra's younger brother Aegon the king, with Sir Criston Cole even crowning Aegon himself. As the Targaryen civil war unfolds, Cole finds himself as the second most powerful person in the realm, the hand of the king to Aegon. For those that have not read the books, I will not do a deep dive into the events that are soon to unfold post Rook's rest, but will touch on the big point and questions some may be asking. When does this traitor get what's coming to him? Well, that would occur at a lovely event known as the Butcher's Ball. Criston marched south from Harrenhal with his remaining host of Greens to meet the Hightower host traveling along the western shore of the God's Eye. The Blacks destroyed villages and polluted the waters on his line of march, cutting off supplies to the Greens. The rivermen, such as my boy Bloody Ben Blackwood, the Lord of Raventree, did guerrilla-style attacks on Criston's host as they marched south. While marching from the God's Eye to the Blackwater Rush, Criston's surviving host was met at a ridge by an army of thousands of Black supporters, led by Sir Geribald Grey, Sir Pate of Longleaf, and Roderick Dustin, the Lord of Barrowton. Criston offered to yield if the Blacks would spare the lives of his men, but he was refused. When Criston then challenged all three of his counterparts, Pate of Longleaf responded to Criston, "I'll have no songs about how brave you died, Kingmaker. There's tens of thousands dead on your account." Pate had Rob Rivers and his archers strike down the Kingmaker with 3 arrows. Hundreds of Criston's men were then killed by the Rivermen and Winter Wolves in the ensuing Butcher's Ball in 130 AC. Garibald and Pate brought Criston's head on a spear to the first Battle of Tumbleton. The remains of the traitor, the Earl of Warwick, were treated with more dignity than Criston, but both met their end on the field of battle. Both Kingmakers, spurned by jealousy, turned their backs on their friends and allies and attempted to install the younger siblings on the throne. The Earl of Warwick with King Edward's younger brother, George, Duke of Clarence, and Sir Criston Cole with Queen Rhaenyra's younger brother, Prince Aegon. Earl of Warwick did a bit more flip-flopping than Cole, but nonetheless they both turned traitor to their original causes. Coincidentally, their friends' marriages is what drove both relationships apart. Cole won Rhaenyra married Laenor and ultimately killed Laenor's lover. Warwick with Edward's marriage to Elizabeth, which led to her family's rise to power, which he hated. He lashed out by eventually defecting and ultimately executing both her brother and father. Upon turning their cloaks, they made alliances with the respective queens and matriarchs of their new camps, Cole with Queen Alicent and Warwick with Queen Margaret of Anjou. Both men rose to be the second in command to their kings, would wield plenty of power and influence. However, as fast as they both rose, they fell on the field of battle as traitors. Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, met his end at the Battle of Barnet, and Sir Criston Cole, Hand of the King and Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, was shot down at the Butcher's Ball. If you want to watch a show to get a more in-depth look at the Earl of Warwick, I would suggest the Starz series The White Queen, which stars the incredibly talented Rebecca Ferguson as Queen Elizabeth Woodville. The Earl of Warwick is portrayed by James Frain. The actress that played the waif in Game of Thrones, Faye Marsay, plays his daughter Anne Neville in the series. I highly recommend the show as there are tons of parallels to events from this era in the world of Ice and Fire. If you're interested in more historical parallels for me to explore, let me know in the comments. I would definitely love to hear your suggestions. While you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for future uploads. For more House of the Dragon coverage from me, catch me Sunday nights after the episodes on Direwolf City's channel for our live after shows. See you next time. Bye!